Chapter 8. The Room of Resonance. Calderon entered a chamber where the air seemed alive, jacketing him in a subtle, tingling clasp. The walls undulated softly, resembling wavelets frozen mid-motion, their translucent surfaces threaded with glowing lines that pulsed in rhythmic waves. The light shifted unpredictably, scattering in beams that danced through the space like fireflies caught in a breeze. It was not an invitation, but an enticement, urging him to explore, to engage. The floor beneath his feet resisted solidity. Each step he took sent faint wrinkles outward, as if the ground was a thin film suspended over an unseen depth. It held his weight, but hinted at fragility, an illusion of stability that coerced caution. The violin in his hand vibrated faintly, resonating with the room's energy, an unspoken connection drawing him further. At the chamber's center stood a pedestal, a creation of metal and glass interwoven in fluid spirals. Atop it stretched a thin and scintillating string, tethered at both ends by exquisite silver fixtures. The string was in perpetual motion, vibrating with a subtle rhythm that could barely be seen, its energy spilling into the air as a quiet hum. The sound was neither harsh nor melodic, but felt like the hum of an unseen force shaping the chamber itself. Calderon approached cautiously, each step measured as the hum drew louder, embedding itself into his chest. Around him the walls flickered with faint, broken images, shapes and colors that hinted at memories, yet refused to form. The room felt heavy with expectation. Then came whispers. They began softly threading through the hum like faint breezes, circling him with unformed words. Their tones swelled, growing louder, overlapping in turbulent dissension. The sound battered against him, rising into a crescendo brimming with an oppressive force. Calderon flinched, gripping the violin tightly as a hint of unease crept through him. The whispers became a roar, sharp and erratic, pulling at his thoughts, stirring fears he couldn't name. For a moment he felt he might be swallowed by the noise, eaten by the patternless chords. But then the tone shifted. The whispers softened, their edges smoothing into a melody like warmth that wrapped around him. The chamber exhaled, releasing the tension it had built, leaving him in a stillness that felt self-aware. A voice broke through the calm, not external, but emanating from the walls, the air, and within himself. The rift has spoken. Now it is time to know it. Calderon's gaze returned to the string on the pedestal. Its vibration had intensified. The motion now plainly visible, its hum clear and deliberate. He stepped closer, drawn by an unspoken understanding. He reached out, his fingers hovering over the string. The labyrinth had shown him its challenges required more than action. They demanded reflection and surrender. This moment would be no different. With a moment of focus, Calderon plucked the string. The note that emerged wasn't a singular sound, but a conglomeration blended together. It expanded outward, unfurling like a tapestry of vibrations that filled the room and reverberated through his body. The translucent walls came alive, light and shadow intertwining to form shapes. These shapes solidified into scenes, portions of his life replayed in realistic detail. The power of the music was evident, inspiring hope and a sense of possibility. He saw himself as a boy, wide-eyed and eager, clutching his first violin. The joy on his face was unmistakable, but the scene was undercut by his father's sharp, disapproving voice. The image shifted, becoming that of a teenager on stage, bow poised, his hands steady but his eyes clouded with doubt. The applause that followed his performance felt empty, each clap echoing a void he didn't yet understand. Then the vision darkened. He saw himself walking away from the music altogether, his violin abandoned, his expression one of anger and shame. The final vision froze him. He stood alone in a vast, dark expanse, his violin in hand. Around him, echoes of his past performances clashed and distorted, growing until they became unbearable. The empty space mirrored the hollow ache in his chest, a deep emptiness he spent years avoiding. The voice returned, serene and soothing. These are the notes of your life, clashing and harmonious, joy and regret. You carry them all. To reject the distortion is to reject the peace. Calderon's breath hitched, the weight of the words pressing down on him. He had spent so long trying to silence the parts of himself that didn't fit the image he wanted to present. The labyrinth, with its unrelenting clarity, was showing him the cost of that denial. "What do I do with this?" he asked, his voice cracking. The voice replied, "Play. Let the imperfections be known." The violin felt impossibly weighty in Calderon's hands, a burden he wasn't sure he could bear. Still, he raised it to his shoulder, the familiar press of wood against bone anchoring him. He drew the bow across the strings. The first note quivered, then hesitant, like the moments of doubt that settle when decisions press too hard. More notes followed, uneven and raw, filled with barbed edges of frustration. They echoed missteps and failures, the times he had spoken too soon or not at all, the promises broken, the dreams abandoned out of fear. The dissonance stung, each note like a reminder of relationships strained and plans that had unraveled despite his best efforts. The music faltered, threatening to collapse into silence. Calderon's breath caught, but he kept playing. He thought of how life isn't a polished performance. It's filled with misplayed moments, jarring interruptions, and choices made in the face of uncertainty. The notes, jagged and unrefined, reflected that truth. He allowed the sounds to swell, the imperfections no longer something to hide, but something to honor. The whispers returned, rising like murmurs from forgotten corners of his mind, but they weren't menacing now. They were memories, each one a part of him. They met the music, guiding his bow, shaping the notes. The fear didn't disappear. It settled into place, its tension no longer an enemy, but an essential part of the melody. The sound evolved, richer, fuller. The notes became layered with both sorrow and triumph, reflecting the bittersweet cadence of every adult life. Love lost and found, failures that led to growth, struggles that carved out strength. The dissonance, once unbearable, became a vital piece of the harmony. Without it, there would be no depth, no story worth hearing. As the final note rang out, steady and clear, it filled the chamber. The fractured walls glowed softly, their light no longer jagged but cohesive and calm, as if they too had been healed by the music. Calderon lowered the violin, his hand trembling from the effort, his chest rising and falling in deep, cleansing breaths. In that silence he understood. Life's beauty lies not in perfection, but in embracing its discord and letting it become part of the whole. The voice spoke one last time, its tone warm and steady. Harmony is not the absence of antagonism. It is the acceptance of all that you are. In espousing the discord, you create gentle accord. Calderon deeply felt this message of self-acceptance and empowerment, filling him with the sense of strength and understanding. Calderon stood in silence, contemplating. He didn't need to erase his past or perfect himself. He needed to integrate the pieces and find strength in the things he had sought to avoid. When he opened his eyes, the pedestal had changed. The string was gone, replaced by a tiny, intricately designed key. Its surface twinkled slightly. When he picked it up, its weight was solid and comforting in his hand. Calderon held it tightly, intuitively understanding its significance. It was a tool for the labyrinth as well as a symbol of the transcending harmony he had found within himself. It was the key to a harmony that elevated his entire being. A new passage appeared, its edges glowing with a soft golden light. Calderon stepped toward it, the violin and key held close. Reshaped again, deeply within his being, he moved forward. The room's whispers faded, replaced by a quiet melody that echoed in his heart. The path continued, and Calderon walked it bravely.